Thank you so much for staying tuned to this channel. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. Since apologies for coming slightly behind schedule. Yes, I got your message. Yes, one of our various viewers who talked about last week's edition, and we talked about the British Prime Minister's resignation. All right, now all you need to just go to our YouTube channel. That is, log on to YouTube, go to search ITV Radio Benin, type it, click on the search button, you get to see ITV Radio Benin, click on it, you get to see the videos and the rest of them. Click on the videos, scroll down, then International Forum, the one we talked about, Boris Johnson's resignation, and of course the consequences of that resignation. Global impact is there. You can watch it to learn one or two things from it, okay? This is all about current affairs program globally. Well, today it is all about Sri Lanka crisis, lessons learned. I am Wilson Omasha. I wouldn't want to go deep into summary because I have analysts here in the studio waiting to pour out their minds, their hearts, their opinions on what transpired in Sri Lanka that saw the president, Rajapaksa, jettisoning out of the country and faxed his resignation. Yeah. And that was how severe and how intense it was. And in Sri Lanka, right now, Sri Lanka is trying to find her foot because things are going topsy-turvy. With me here in the studio, I have a legal practitioner, a political analyst. Join me to welcome Barrister Emmanuel Obapola. Barrister, welcome to International Forum. I appreciate your coming.
Good afternoon, Wilson. Good afternoon, Nigerians.
And of course, very close to him, he is a lecturer, Uniben. Yeah, a clergyman, also political analyst. Join me to welcome Honorable Frank Amego. Welcome to International Forum. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, viewers.
All right, sitting very close to me, he is a vibrant youth, a political analyst, and entrepreneur. Join me to welcome Sonny Igebo. Thank you so much for coming. I keep calling you Sonny. I wonder why that is. It's Etiosa.
No, he's looking bright.
It's looking bright because
he's trying to change the narrative. Yeah, that history.
Igebo Etiosa. I keep calling you Sonny. I wonder why. Maybe you don't take that name, Sonny. Sonny, why not? If it's Sonny, you're true. Yes, Etiosa Igebo.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, viewers.
Etiosa, I'll start off with you. When all these things started, it started with inflation, and after that, there was a hike in fuel prices. All of a sudden, there were no fuel available for them to go about their normal duties. That was when it went off the roof. Did you see them ever coming out en masse to protest, to chase the president out of the presidential villa, after which he left the country for Singapore?
Well, I think those are, it's like when such things are happening that affects the economy. The economy is the people directly. So when you talk about the people, you practically are talking about the economic in human form. And there's no way that such recklessness in governance relative to fiscal policy, proper and adequate measures being implemented in running the affairs of the country be jettisoned due to the instance of very short-sighted corruption activities by government officials. Certainly, it is only a matter of time that the keg sitting on the gunpowder will explode. That is practically what we are seeing in real time. The damage that has been done to the Sri Lankan economy has started a long time ago. But it's just when you say some things are happening, it's like a HIV virus. But by the time it becomes AIDS, it can become a sickness in any way or form. So we always know that economic problems that leads to inflation, for instance, where money is pumped in to ease, we call it quantitative easing, and people spend a lot of money without following processes in terms of interest rates and having an understanding from the part of government. And then by the time there's inflation, the value of a currency starts to go down, depending on the activities of what the country produces or how they are doing things on international basis as a way of earning money. So by the time those problems continues and there's inflation, obviously the government will run a higher deficit, whereby the reserves they have to show up whatever they are spending in terms of having cheap borrowing starts to fall apart. that evidently leads to things that will affect maybe when they import petroleum product, or maybe when they are procuring certain things to refine petroleum product, eventually can lead to deficiency in that aspect. When it happens, it affects the people and moving around within the economy. Then the only result is what you've seen now. The situation has moved from bad to worse, and I do believe that it will take a very long time for the Sri Lankan economy to come out of this problem.
That's right. Now, if you take a look at the history of Sri Lanka, these two brothers, the Rajapaksas, they were the one that fought for their so-called liberation. They were the one that really shouldered the responsibility of liberating Sri Lanka from the oppressors. Then being chased out of their country from what they've done in the past. Is it fair on the part of the citizens, Honorable?
Yes. The president was not forced out of the country. He ran away for obvious reasons. And in 2019, that there was a bomb blast. There are a lot of bomb blasts everywhere, even in Nigeria, especially northern part of Nigeria. The major thing he had as a challenge was poor economic management. He didn't understand economics. That's why some of us right now in Nigeria, we want a president that understands economics. There's a place for politics. There's nothing wrong with being political. But understand the economic values of the people. Like when they had some challenges, like in 2009, I think there was a war there. And later on, they were able to recover from the war. Instead of looking at foreign investments to generate a lot of income for the nation, it pumped its resources into domestic activities. So that in a way portended the poor economic situation they are having now. So what he did recently, in April, they started protesting. He couldn't go in to calm the people down, just like what happened in Nigeria 2020 about the end SARS and all that. The federal government was able to douse tension, good or bad. But April, May, June, then July, he couldn't handle the situation. So that also, in a way, challenged his leadership qualities. That he and his brother, the former prime minister, that one even resigned earlier in the system. And they discovered that they could not carry on anymore. So that would have been a better opportunity for him to bring in the right set of people into his cabinet. He refused. So there's no way we're going to feel sorry for what happened on his behalf. What he has plunged Sri Lanka into is a thing that will take several years to recover from. And no thanks to him.
He used the word or the phrase, no thanks to him, talking about Rajapaksa, the president of Sri Lanka that chose to jettison out of Sri Lanka because of the pressure being heaped on him by the citizens, urging him to resign. If you take a look at the situation, those excuses he gave, are they not genuine excuses?
They are not genuine excuses, because looking at Sri Lanka as a nation, first let's go to memory lane. Sri Lanka gained independence in 1948. The capital, Colombo, has been a very strategic state in the nation Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is lying at the Indian Ocean, with India as one of our neighbors. And now, Sri Lanka has gone through different crises. In 2009, they had a lot of crises. Then in 2019, Sri Lanka just came out of internal civil crisis. And the former president, Rajapaksa, was elected, having promised the people that he is the solution to the plight of the people. Now, the Sri Lanka has gone through so much pains during his reign since 2019, to the extent that there is no medicine in Sri Lanka just now. There is no fuel. There is no food. And to worsen it, there is power cut down. So the people now saw it. Look, we just came out of crisis in 2019. And this man made a lot of promises that he is the solution to the problem we've gone through. Now, he has not been able to find solution to the problem. Instead, the foreign debt case is increasing to the extent that Sri Lanka is now indebted of the tune of $51 billion.
Yes.
Foreign debt. The internal debt, $2.3 billion to China and $3.2 billion to Japan. So looking at all this summation, the summation of all this financial involvement, the people that gave hope, they are now in a state of despair. They look at themselves, we are hopeless. We don't have any solution to all of this crisis. We don't think we can come out of this crisis, particularly with the foreign reserve, with the foreign debt of $51 billion and a population of 22 million.
Just 22 million.
And it's increasing. Mind you, Sri Lanka is just an island.
Yeah.
It's not a country with
Huge landmarks.
landmarks. It's an island. So looking at your situation with debt left, right, center, how do we come out of it? And that necessitated the crisis. And the president, having known that he is not a solution, he cannot provide solution to the crisis just now, the man fled, perhaps for his life. And he has abandoned, he jettisoned the people. The people are now in turmoil. You see the people, they took over the presidential villa to the extent the swimming pool became a source of water to the people. And they began to enjoy what the president was enjoying.
I'm coming to that because if you take a look at the clip, people like, coming towards presidential palace, he never harmed anyone. He never told the soldiers to open fire. They were welcomed and they met him in the swimming pool. The way he handled the protest, I don't think that is the right way protests should be handled if you want to compare to other climes.
Well, if there was calm in the midst of trouble, definitely something you can applaud to an extent, because what was so calm, that appeared so calm, can be so bloody at the same time, would have appeared to be so bloody. To me, it's very painful and very sad to sit here and discuss the total collapse and the breakdown of a sovereign nation where you have 22 million people living. That is a huge task, is a big problem that I don't even want to fathom in my head. It is surprising, and I'm very surprised to assume that Sri Lanka, I have friends from Sri Lanka who borders with India, that has grown from a third world country into more like a more modern day country with a good economic system, whereby the government of the day in India is able to sustain the values of the rupees. Even if I understand that India has what they call gold holdings. Gold holdings is perhaps what prop up the value of a currency. And for Sri Lanka to be close to them, it's almost like in my adage, when you build a house close to a rich man and it owns his light, the goodwill of that illumination of the light should get to your comfort as well. That is why you shouldn't envy the rich guy. But for some reason, with all those sort of people, like a country like India close to Sri Lanka, I wonder how they were able to get themselves into this turmoil. Let us not forget, we always say, they say freedom comes by struggle. When the Sri Lanka brothers took over government, definitely they didn't take over government through the process of maybe genuine democratic system. They may have taken over because they had the military system of the same family with them. At the same time, they were the people with the barrel and the gun. So that obviously teaches the reasons why they were able to take over the country to the firepower of the, in quotes, the people who were handling the country. But that does not metamorphosize into good economic management of a country. Because they kind of blind to that aspect of it, they were not able to kind of harness the best brains, people that they have within the country who can help drive the country on a multilateral system rather than unilateral system. You're a presidential dictator. You run the country. But you have to be smart like the president of Rwanda, Kagame, to understand that even as a military man, if you have come through coup, or perhaps you've become a military president by default of election, you should be able to tap into the best brain and help them run the country on the areas of economy. That is why I said the people are the economy is the people. If, for instance, in Nigeria, the cost of living or procuring fuel is cheap, it's not too expensive, for instance. If the cost of paying electricity bill is not too expensive, if the roads are fixed and it's properly running, if the cost of getting on a plane flying from Benin to Abuja or to Lagos is reasonable, and most people say about 60% can afford it, whether you are rich or middle class or poor, you realize that the default in the political system will not be in the limelight. You realize that the issues of religion cannot have a space in the system. So outside politics, politicians are mainly very loop-sided and one-sided people. They're not very smart. They are smart with playing politics and sometimes, many times, being deceptive. But they should also be smart enough to understand that you can be a politician in power, but you need people who are as good as you, holding on to power to hold on to the economy and make it work for everybody.
Right. Holding on to power, holding on to economy to make it work right for everybody. Now, this crisis has been on for quite a while, but not to that extent of the president, my president right now, jetting out of the country, trying to look for a base in Singapore. If you really take a look at what really happened before the eruption that really led to the arson of former President Rajapaksa, it was when he called out to Russia for help. Right after that news that they're calling on Russia to supply them energy. I mean, do you think that that really triggered someone to really take out the pin of the grenade?
Yes, the rescue is sought for from Russia was still another misnomer. At that time, up to now, Russia and Ukraine, they're at war. It is not that kind of a nation that you run back to for any form of support. Because anything that Russia will have will be meant for themselves as a country. So now, US before now has indicated interest. I think about $32 billion they have invested or given them. Maybe it's free, I don't know.
It's a loan.
It's a loan to revamp their economy, IMF and all that. So if you saw that somebody is helping you out, you don't go to the enemy of that person to ask for help. So that Rajapaksa ran away to Singapore. I'm sure as he's there now, he won't have rest of mind. You came into power. Nobody forced it on you that you could do this. You tried and tried. There was no headway. What stopped him from resigning? He would have resigned. At least he's not an African president that would never resign. He could have resigned honorably. That I thought that this thing would be like this. Just like a game of football. You play better off in the football match when you are watching. But in the field of play, you get there, you run 2-3 times, you are exhausted. You can indicate. Let your coach know that. Time out. Please, I can't carry on. Or like if you not refuse to leave the pitch, and because of your challenge, they now scored against you. That becomes a major challenge. So the president had everything he needed. Just like the brother resigned from being the prime minister. He too would have resigned. So to go and meet Russia for help was adding insult to injury. So he would have asked for help from nations that are disposed to helping Sri Lanka, and having that on a friendly note. I'm sure America by now be wondering, won't Sri Lanka sabotage our efforts? Because China, that is a friend to Russia, is being owed so much. They are indebted to China. And China is not right off the debt. So, you are leaving China that is not helping you, meet the friend of China again, Russia, for help. And America is there. The G7, they are there. He didn't meet any of them. So that goes to show that he doesn't understand governance. He doesn't understand diplomacy, international diplomacy. If he had understood it, Russia would have been the first place to go to. At least first IMF. IMF will help you out. UN will help you out. By extension, US will help you out. By going to Russia, I'm sure that's where everything collapsed. Russia can't help you now because Russia is fighting. You can't be fighting and they ask you to help me to solve a matter. You can't. Because the war between Russia and Ukraine is not an easy one for even Russia in the first instance. Not talk about, okay, Russia will just in a moment bring down Ukraine. So any other challenge, you want Russia to help you out. So what the former president, there's an election tomorrow.
Yes.
Hopefully. So if they now get a new president, I wonder where Rajapaksa will now go to. He is hiding now, thinking the Sri Lankans are after him. But by tomorrow or within a week, they have a new president. Will they come back or still remain in Singapore?
Good question. Well, we'll just leave that question for now till after the election. Now back to the Russia factor. Because according to them, that is the only person they could turn to at that particular point in time, and Russia did not complain. Take it up from there.
Rajapaksa made a very grievous mistake. One, by going to Russia. Two, by not tendering his resignation letter. I haven't seen that he is not able to do like he promised the people. Looking at the strategic position of Sri Lanka is an Asian country. Like we did say in our introduction, Sri Lanka is close to India and other nations. Having been indebted to nations like China, Japan, and now you now look for an enemy of the world just now, Russia.
If Russia is an enemy of the world, I don't think that is relative.
You could interpret it to mean that. But just now, the whole world is not happy with the step Russia has taken by invading Ukraine. That is the chloroquine bitter truth just now. But having said that, now, like my co-panelist said here, going to a nation that is also at war, a nation that has invested so much into war, into an invasion, an illegal invasion by international laws, you are going to that. It shows that you are aligning yourself with the crime so committed by that nation just now. And that is why the whole world has folded our hands and is looking at him now to see how he can come out of the problem. And instead of facing the problem headlong or resigning, the man choose to flee. Now, by your question, having fled to Singapore, should Sri Lanka conduct an election and a president emerges and maybe perhaps fortune smiles on Sri Lanka and things turn around for the good, would he say he wants to come back to Sri Lanka because he's a citizen of Sri Lanka and haven't been a president that puts them in the situation they found themselves just now? So, looking at the best option for him would have been to resign. Perhaps, and I think that is the position, the man never sought for the best of brains. Maybe he looked for his own political ally, just like we see in Africa. And before you know, the price of everything, fuel goes up, just as we have been visited with another fuel increment just now in this country. So I want to say, with all of this crisis here and there, the downtrodden have been put in a state of penury by the second. And that's what happened in Sri Lanka. The people have been pained by the second. And the only faith, the only hope left for them was for that protest. And now, you did ask a question from this. Why is it that there was no opposition, there was nothing against the protest, even the military stood allowed? The military, they are part of the country. They are also going through what is happening there. And I want to believe that they themselves, they are not happy with what was going on. Perhaps the man gave an order and somebody refused to carry out the order. Just as we saw some time here in this nation, where an order was given for somebody to go to Benue and say, I didn't know that he didn't go. Okay, so it's like that.
Okay, well, you just hold on now. I want to take a break or return. We will definitely continue with the discussion, Sri Lankan crisis, lessons learned, and of course, we're going to narrow deeper into the Russian factor. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. We're taking a look at Sri Lankan crisis, lessons learned. I've been talking with three gentlemen here with me in the studio. They've been throwing wonderful points and analysis, on what the world should do. And of course, leaders of the world should do, or what lessons should be picked from what is going on in Sri Lanka. And of course, I have Tiosa Igebo. I also have Honorable Frank Anego and Barrister Emmanuel Obakolo. Now, let me come to you, Tiosa Igebo. The Russian factor. It's like when he now called to Russia for help, like what I asked the Honorable Frank Amego, it's like the needle holding the grenade was removed. 2 days after, there was Roger Pascal, you must go. Do you see the hand of the Westerners?
Well, not precisely. I think that was the last straw. That was the last card he had to play. Because before he went to Russia, the IMF and the G7 or whatnot, one of the financial institutions have all declined in rendering and in giving them any more money.
There is assistance to them.
Yeah, because they've rendered assistance before and again, and they failed to manage the money that was given to them properly. Because I was reading and listening to the news when I realized that the amount of fuel that was given to them by Russia or by India, because India at some point even had to lend them money, was running out and they needed money to procure more. I think for the fact that the major players, which is Japan and China, who was financing this country over time, over these years, trying to be part of a working relationship with Sri Lanka and have a bilateral relationship, comfortable enough for them to invest money into the economy, all these billions of dollars in deficit has definitely gone somewhere. This money was not eaten and swallowed by a fish or a shark or maybe a snake like they said in Nigeria, but this money has been siphoned through the back door to other climates where the people are living large of those resources. So when you look at trapping money within an economy and then issues of fiscal policies, running the government perhaps has been reduced to an extent, it just became endemic. Why we keep crying sometimes that the issue of corruption is not a good thing. You do not allow corruption to eat into a governmental system so deep to the point whereby the percentage of corruption will become bigger than the GDP of the country. So for anybody who's lending money to a particular country to succeed, which is the same model that other countries that are doing well has followed. The countries that are lending money to you, either through the IMF or through India or G7 or World Bank, the American has a debt of over $20 trillion, but they're still able to lend money because
to China.
Yeah, they're still able to lend money because the economy is intact. The government and the ways they're running the economy is intact. The people can actually see the books, whoever perhaps may want to lend money to them. A lot of the things and jobs they outsource to China are done in credit. It is operation and they pay them. So if Sri Lanka economy became unsustainable, you cannot just blame it on the government or the president alone, who do not really understand why you should create a more vibrant sectors within the government to run the economy. Everybody that is involved, from the civil servants to perhaps the economy that had nothing to offer, as long as you know, Sri Lanka didn't really have much natural resources. They may have population, they don't have anything that anybody may want to leverage on to sustain the economy. You can understand why this problem has come. For Russia to say, well, they're currently going through a situation, like my big brother said, that the world is against Russia. I don't necessarily put it that way. The bodies that lend money is not much. I don't think from the IMF to the World Bank to the US or India, I don't think it's more than 10 institutions that can lend big money to anybody. So when you say the world, that number of people with regard to demographic spread of lending money is nothing compared to 0.00001% of the world population. Certain countries are not with Russia. Some countries are in support of Russia. But Russia is currently going through its own challenges. And sometimes it may be difficult for them to perhaps take on the Sri Lankan problems, knowing fully whether they already have an understanding with a different country. Because when they're going into any country to work with them, you must be able to have a foothold on that particular agreement, which is the hegemony power play over the country. Most countries have their affiliates and relationship with different power brokers. Sri Lanka has been known to have tilted towards Japan and China. It will not have any benefit directly for Russia to want to come in at this point and put money into a system that they are not in charge of. I believe that is probably why they had their limitations. And by the time Russia was not willing to take the risk, and India has done their best, even though China and Japan was the main benefactor of whatever may have gone wrong in the country. From when you lend money to people, like what happened during the world financial crisis, when the European 2004 was held in Portugal, the resources that was used to run that Portugal 2004 was treasury bills from the US, Federal Reserves. The pig nation, Portugal, Italy, England, Ireland, Greece, and whatnot, they were not very meticulous with running the economy. They were not interested in generating more resources and running a cheaper government. They were just getting free treasury bills. Those bills were supposed to be tied or attached to the reserves in the federal whatever in America. By the time they realized there was no money, there was collapse. So that is what has happened. If Russia has refused to give them money, yes, there might be some elements of whether or not you cannot go to my enemy. The enemy may have been the savior. Russia may not want to help them because they're already tied to certain interests from the IMF, and which is obviously attached to the Western countries, and they cannot also take on that responsibility at that time. So I think that is why the whole thing just boomerang and there was a total collapse.
Okay. Now he gave his reason why everything just boomerang and there was a total collapse. We'll take a look at the situation right now in Sri Lanka. They have an election tomorrow. If all things are like equal, do you think that they can get out of this? Talking about double-digit inflation, no medicine, no fuel, no power. I mean, which country can survive on that, even if there is a democratically elected government, Honorable?
Yeah, if they take the right posture, help will come. As we say, two children fighting. Then the older uncle got there and said they should stop fighting and start playing as they were playing before. That's a very mundane way of settling the matter. It was the way they were playing before that caused the fight. Yes. So now, if they can come to a round table and find out what really happened. Sri Lanka is an island, and their major potential is in tourism. So they should go back and develop tourism. What Rajapaksa did after they recovered from the war, it reduced taxes. And that's a poor economic approach to bringing up a country that has gone into depression. Another thing he did, he said they should stop using inorganic fertilizer, instead they should use organic.
So save costs.
That's not saving costs. If you're saving costs at the point at which you have no production of your from your farmland, then you're not saving cost in the nearest future. That's what boomeranged on them. So at the end of the day, the yield reduced. They couldn't have enough crops anymore, and they were major exporter of tea. The tea plant couldn't grow much because of the organic fertilizer. So what was wrong then if he had insisted or bring up a policy to bring in inorganic fertilizer and leverage on the tea that they were exporting? If I'm a bus driver and I'm told, as it is in Nigeria now, the fuel price, pump price is increasing, I won't be bothered about it. It is the way I bought my PMS that will determine the fare I will charge. I won't say because the thing has skyrocketed, I won't buy petrol, I'll park the bus at home. Then the family will suffer. So the approach was wrong. They had a very, very terrible economic perspective towards bringing Sri Lanka from the doldrum they found themselves. So now, the Sri Lanka can come back to life because there was a time, once upon a time, that they were living large. Something happened. All the procedures taken in a particular order can be reversed so that they can beg for relief from loan payments, going by the present situation they found themselves. And at the point, I'm sure some of these lending nations will have some mercy on them for them to come back to life. So if they do the election tomorrow and a winner emerges, that winner should be such a president that will understand deeply economics. The problem they have is economic problems. There's no other problem they're having. So if they can have a leader that can understand economic revamping, that becomes a very easy way for Sri Lanka to bounce back to life again. And I'm very hopeful that dry bones will live again in Sri Lanka.
Dry bones will live again in Sri Lanka. Yeah. Well, you heard the point again. To summarize it all, it's all about economic problem. Now, if you take a look at the crisis, when it all started, he mentioned big nations, he mentioned G7, all of you concur to that. None of these countries really said something tangible to lift the burden of Sri Lankans. It was the people that took the bull by the horn. They went to the man and said, look, enough is enough. You really have to let us go. Now, who do you think the new president or cabinet or parliament should align with this time around?
Yes, the election of tomorrow may make or mar Sri Lanka for eternity. Now,
for eternity?
Yes, may make or mar her for eternity. Sri Lanka as a nation, she is more viable in tourism, and that aspect of boosting the economy was abandoned somewhere. And if you look at the world at large, just now, the world is just trying to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which Rajapaksa used as his defense. But at a point, the defense became defenseless. And the people saw that, look, you are only giving us verbal defenses, and there are no steps taken to see how this situation could be remedied. And that was what led to the crisis just now. But then, looking at Sri Lanka, the forthcoming election, it is going to be a very tall order for whoever is going to mount the affairs of leadership in Sri Lanka just now. Because what has happened in Sri Lanka has going to show that there is difference between government and also the procedure of governance. If you have a government that do not have the prowess to carry out good governance that could impact and affect the people positively, then there is no need for government. So, and the government of Rajapaksa just now failed in Sri Lanka. So what the people need just now, because when you talk about the economy, you cannot separate the economy totally from the political aspect of it, because it is when the political aspect of a nation is viable, is strong, and you have men who have something in their head, are there mounting the positions of leadership, then the economy can be boosted. The economy can become alive again. Just like we saw some time ago in this nation, when, permit me to mention, when President Olusegun Obasanjo took over, we saw it brought in good hands. Just a very handful of them. The person of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, and we saw how things turn around. Even some of the debts that we are owing then were forgiven. So Sri Lanka just now needs people of the caliber of Okonjo-Iweala to see that things could
turn around. Are you serious?
Yes, they do. So that things could turn around. So the election, like I did say from the outset, could mar or make it for eternity. So if the president comes, the persons, the hands that the president will bring into the cabinet to see how there could be liberation again that they was experienced upon the gaining of independence in 1948. So they may see it again. So it depends how the political structure is built just now. Then that will now reflect on the viability of the economy, so that what they have abandoned, what was not done by Rajapaksa, the new person who will mount the affairs of leadership in Sri Lanka could begin to introduce that, could begin to see how life could be meaningful, because just now the emptiness of life have visited the people of Sri Lanka. So the people just need somebody who could come and take a step of change, so that things could turn around for them. And when things turn around, those who are just now occupying the palace will begin to retreat to see how they can go back to their various homes.
All right, because right now many citizens are still there in the streets of Sri Lanka. marching, saying they need a change, they need a change. Now, it didn't turn violent until the president, ex-president Rajapaksa left the country. That was when the prime minister gave an order to the military to restore order, and that was when we started seeing canisters, tear gas, gunshots, some people losing their life. That was when it all started. They're expecting to collect the elections tomorrow. With a tumor on the ground, do you think the election will be peaceful?
Well, I'm sure you can understand that when there's problems in a particular country, we don't expect to have the best election, but let us hope that the election will be peaceful. Because if the people were behaving themselves, even while they moved into the villa, I would assume that they are naturally perhaps a bit laid back sort of people. Because not many people or a country would be that calm in the environment that they found themselves to even allow the president an exit strategy or route to go to wherever he went to. For me, it is just unfortunate that things has happened the way they are in Sri Lanka. Most of the time, the weaker point of any institutions or any particular game ends up becoming the leaking point, like we say. If you have a weak defender, you end up conceding more goals. In the economic disposition of wealth and hegemony and authority and how things are run, how the world operate, the country with lesser mineral resources, where there's no much interest, happens to suffer first. For example, what happened to Greece was because they were pretty much a tourist nation. Same thing has repeated itself in Sri Lanka today. So it means that when countries don't have natural resources, and perhaps all they are relying on is maybe tea, and many countries like Uganda produce tea because they have one of the best tea because of the nature of their soil and coffee. It was a bad luck for Sri Lanka to have the kind of people they had in government. Like Barrister said, if they have more vibrant people who are sound economists, perhaps you should understand that sound economists usually shy away from political environment, because political environment can be very hostile. Political environment can be very pretentious, whereby people who are destroying it will want to make you believe that the one who is fixing it. That way they can live a better life or do well somewhere else where the country is ready to work. For example, a lot of the economists and barristers and doctors and pharmacists, people of those nature are known to have milked character in their nature. They are very gentle people. Professors, for instance, they're usually very gentle. If you want to mix that, like a pig's mix, for them to come into a country and help solve Sri Lanka problems in the midst of this violence, they may be scared and shy away. That may not help Sri Lanka to gain as much spread as having people with the set of mindset to grow the economy just now. But if they are able to get one good guy like the president of Rwanda, Kagame, to come on board and then have us set up a government to then, if you bring these people in, it might be the best and the shortest way to succeed in. I am saying this because when you look at Rwanda, for instance, it's become one of the best countries in the world because one man just found the need, a military man for that matter, found reasons to say, well, you know, we need to fix this country. By so doing, he has metamorphosed from being where he is to where he is today. The country is taking the lead in Africa. Their currencies are one of the strongest, only because even those that are lending money wants to see responsibility. The Sri Lanka government could not fathom the problem of HIV that has become AIDS. The rot has eaten so deep that everybody was willing to siphon money and go away. But as it is today, I want to hope and pray and assume and believe that if Sri Lanka was to go back to the heydays of being able to set the economy in a trajectory and a direction today, it would be better for them to go back to China and Japan, who are the biggest lender. Perhaps maybe when they were lending this money, those people also monitored the money that they gave out. They knew the channels at which this money has gone out. It is you that destroys things that usually has the best way to fix it. Maybe if the Chinese and the Japanese are able to find a suitable person that will do things the way they want, they might be able to actually have a way out.
So you're saying for them to harvest too, to monitor the money. Okay, well, you keep talking about Kagame, Rwanda. Right now, the position in that country, Rwanda, they're accusing Kagame of holding on to power for too long. That's a talk for another day.
Well, if he holds on to power for too long, until you have a man who holds on to power.
That would be the talk for another day. Hold on, because you know, I go through reports, I go through everything.
We don't want to be like Sri Lanka and remain the way they are. So let them have Kagame and remain the way they are. And become like Sri Lanka.
I'm going to ask you the same question with this violence around Do you foresee a peaceful election in Sri Lanka tomorrow?
In fact, we do have a palpable peace because he decided to flee. Nobody drove him away.
The people chased him. Was like, nobody don't want you anymore.
They invaded the presidential villa.
He was in the pool. It wasn't gentle. It was just in a tight corner. That's why I couldn't react.
And he was smiling. I said, come join
Security
me.
is no longer guaranteed.
Maybe I should teach some Benin adages. A man was asked, who set this farm on fire? He said, I'm not the one. I'll put the fire here where I'm standing. So what we are saying now is the former president, the flip president, created the problem for Sri Lanka. So his exit now will spell peace for them. Because they are not fighting themselves right now. They are not. Even the prime minister that became the acting president is the only one to contest. I'm very sure they are not going to vote for him to the point of winning the election. Because it's like good riddance to bad rubbish now. People are now better off than they were when the Pascal was there.
Are they really better off?
But now this was the person creating the problem.
All right.
And the person is no more with us.
Okay.
So I'm sure tomorrow's election will be some relatively peaceful for a new person to come on board.
You're going to have the last line on this discussion. What advice do you have for Sri Lankans and, of course, the world leaders watching and observing what is happening right now in Sri Lanka? Briefly.
Well, firstly, one has no choice but to commend the people of Sri Lanka. We saw the unity, we saw the oneness, we saw the togetherness. Religion was not a factor to separate them. Ethnicity was not a factor to separate them. Rather, we saw oneness. And I do think that what they wanted is what they have gotten just now. So the election will be relatively peaceful. And I'm double sure that from this step that they have taken, there will be change in Sri Lanka.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Our time is up. I know you have so much to say. I know you want to talk about the Rwanda Kagame thing. According to reports, I go through everything. I watch everything. I'll be like, come on what aspect says, on another aspect. You want to become a dictator, not be a topic for another day of international forum. Well, you've heard them. Lessons to be learned in Sri Lanka. People came out in mass to say enough to bad governance, enough to lack of infrastructure development, enough to lack of energy. Not even an out of fear could be savaged in many villages. In fact, in all villages in Sri Lanka, that really caused the uproar. Energy, zero, except for the palace. Food scarce, medicine scarce, governance collapsed. If it's been Nigeria, if it's been other climes, do you think they can really hear it? Think about it. If you're in a position, you have to go on the people well because you are democratically elected to lead them. According to Vision Nigeria, China, if you are a president, please preside well. Governor, govern well. Senator, you senate well. You know, police, you police well. I don't want to get into that part about bribe.
And if you're a citizen, behave well.
So you behave well so that the world can be a better place. Gentlemen, thank you once more. I appreciate a wonderful analysis. Next week, Tuesday, will be at another time for another edition of International Forum. Bye for now.